Kia ora koutou, haere mai, and welcome along to Showy Ovaries, a podcast where I, previously ignorant, now fast getting a PhD in perimenopause's pernicious and positive manifestations in the female form, overly loquacious Penny Ashton, learn all I can about how the change can transform women and trans individuals in all its dizzying ways. A quick reminder, as always, that I am not a doctor. I am not an expert in lady gardens, though I did get second prize in the vegetable sculpture competition in St. Joseph's Papanui Flower Show in 1984 for a potato called Frightful Frida. But if you want to see someone who can diagnose symptoms not involving root vegetables, please see a medical professional. Today's guest, though, is virtually a gynecologist, given her recent assiduous research into the machinations of menopause for her freshly published book, Don't Sweat It, How to Make the Change a Good One. She's a previous magazine editor, a freelance writer, a novelist specializing in delicious Italian adventures, and is happily beaming into my office today. So please give a rapturous welcome from wherever you're listening to Nicky Pellegrino. Hello.
Hello.
Kia ora, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Excellent, good. Now, I have got to say to you, bloody congratulations, because today, I think it was a few days ago, you were number 2 on the fiction best-selling list, as well as number 2 on the non-fiction best-selling list. So that's that's amazing.
Double number twos. Yeah. I was really pleased, actually, very excited.
It's like you're the Zoe Sadowski-Sinnott of New Zealand publishing right now.
It's my moment and I'm going to enjoy it.
Totally. Did you ever imagine that this might be the case?
No, I honestly didn't imagine writing a non-fiction book. It wasn't particularly part of the plan.
But then menopause came along.
Well, yeah. And actually, I do a lot of writing for the listener and I do health stories for them and sometimes big, long cover stories. And I was picking up on all this stuff about menopause in the overseas media. And I've been kind of collecting things and thinking, oh, there's a good story here and perhaps I'll write it. And then I got approached by Alan and Unwin, who said, would you like to write a book about menopause? And in that, you know how you go through periods of life where you think, I will say yes to opportunities. I will say yes to life. Well, I said yes. And there were many, many moments I regretted it because it is a complex world.
Menopause or nonfiction? Or both?
Menopause.
Yeah.
Menopause in midlife for women is incredibly complex and sometimes it's very hard to get straight answers. And also it's enormously diverse. My experience is the same as any other woman's, which you will be finding from talking to women. So there was suddenly an enormous amount to learn, which was daunting.
Right, absolutely. Right. Okay, well, I've got a longer introduction for you that we will do, and then we'll get into the meat and root vegetables of the situation. So here we go. Nicky Pellegrino was born in Liverpool in 1964 to an Italian father and English mother. She gained an honours degree in English from the University of Lancaster, which I have been to, and it's a very cute town, before moving to New Zealand in 1994 to be with her now husband, Khan, even though she hardly knew him at the time, taking a chance after meeting him at a wedding in the UK. But it's all worked out, especially career-wise, where she has been deputy, then editor of the New Zealand Women's Weekly, book editor at the Herald on Sunday, and written for a kaleidoscope of other publications. In 2001, her friend, the late great news reading legend Angela Diordney, was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumour at only 56 and asked Nicky to co-write her autobiography. This emotionally draining process inspired her to seize the day and write the novels she always felt that she had within before her time ran out. And so began her career as a publishing juggernaut, drawing inspiration from her Italian family heritage and one or two gastronomic delights. In fact, she was taking culinary tours to Italy before COVID screwed everything up. She has published lucky number 13 novels now, and she's gotten to a certain age where suddenly she thought to herself, what the hell is happening to me, and why the hell didn't I know about it? And she's determined to share her new menopause knowledge with all of us. So once again, yay, please welcome Nicky Pellegrino. Now, I think that so your husband's name is like Khan, but it's spelled Kane. So he's literally your piece of meat.
Like the Italian for me, I know, which for somebody with a lot of Italian family members is a little tricky. But yeah, it's kind of a family name. Right. It's a family middle name, and that's what he gets called. And I don't know. I tried to persuade him to change it, but no.
And where is this name from?
He says Cornwall. I don't know if I believe it.
So was he a New Zealander visiting the UK?
No, I met him at a wedding in New Zealand, actually.
I got
In
my God, my research is wrong. Look at that. How terrible. Right. Where?
in Wairarapa. So it was Sarah Kate Lynch, who's also a writer. She was a friend of mine in the UK, and I came over to her wedding and met my husband there.
Oh, how exciting. Right.
A long distance romance. And then I thought, I just turned 30 and I kind of had thought, well, either I do something now or I, stay in this life.
Yeah.
So, I give New Zealand a go,
Right.
see how it works out. Here I still am.
Yeah, and obviously the inter-country romance worked out for your parents. So was that in the back of your mind at all?
Yeah, my dad's from Naples, but it's a bit easier. Like this 2.5 hour plane ride between the UK and Italy.
Yeah.
So it's a bit easier for them.
Yeah.
This is a trickier thing, particularly at the moment, because I can't get back there.
When was the last time you saw them?
Actually, just before lockdown, I went over because my mum had some surgery. So I went in February 2020. Yes, that's right.
It feels like it was 1805.
I know. And I got back 2 weeks before we went into level 4. And actually, I rang my husband in a panic from the UK and said, what if they're taking people's temperatures at passport control and them having a hot flush and they won't let me in?
Yeah, that's true. I wonder if that ever caught anybody out.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because you feel so hot, don't you? You feel like you're an inferno. How could you not appear to be dying of some sort of strange disease?
Yeah, I haven't had a hot flash. That's I'm still pretty much I don't want to say blemish. That's not true. I've got a lot of blemishes, but I'm still in the very early stages. Like I've just started to get some weird sensations in my lady garden. It's so funny how I find it hard to say my vagina. I can say other people's vaginas all day long, but when I say my vagina, it sort of makes me go, ooh, lady garden. Yeah, that's the only thing really, and a little bit of an erratic cycle. So I'm all about learning about it before it happens.
Good plan, because I think that's the thing that it certainly happened for me and lots of the women I spoke to, that perimenopause sort of is a stealthy thing and you don't really, like, your periods become a bit erratic, your moods swing around, but you're busy, right? So you just don't really think, oh, okay, this is it. And for me, it wasn't really until I started getting extremely hot. And I also got this weird heart palpitation thing, which it turns out is really common.
Yeah.
But at the time, I Googled it and I couldn't really find very much.
Yeah.
So I naturally just assumed that I had destroyed my heart with too much bad living. And
well, I do have a bone to pick with you with your book, I have to say, because I have read your book and you're very negative about alcohol.
Oh, sorry. I do still drink alcohol, but I have to say, it's not the gold standard of harm you can do yourself. That's cigarette smoking.
Right. Good.
Really, it's every story that you ever read that claims it's good for you is just exaggerating some really poorly done study. It's just not. And for women, it increases the breast cancer risk. And look, I love it. And I'm not giving it up because I know lots of women that have had breast cancer that lived on plant food and never drank and, exercised every day. So you can be the healthiest person in the world. But I do think you need to be a little bit careful to mitigate your risk. So I am trying to drink less, but better. You see how I got that wrong?
Immediately.
Less but better, Penny. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
So, do you have quite a few alcohol-free days a week? Well, so this is good. I'm glad. Please, thank God. Because I find it really hard. It's so true. I don't like all that, wine o'clock, all that sort of stuff. But it is true that at 5 o'clock while I'm cooking tea, I just go, a glass of wine right now would be really nice.
And I actively don't want to drink during the day. If I have lunch with friends on that rare occasion, I don't really want a glass of wine. I hate that muzzy feeling. But for me, it's that thing where you start cooking dinner at sort of 6, 7 o'clock and I guess it's almost like reflexive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And because I know it's not doing me a lot of good, I'm just trying not to cane it the way I did when I was a younger woman.
Cane it. Hey, University in Lancaster was a good time.
It was.
Yeah. It was a bit at the University of Canterbury as well. I think my record was 4 jugs. Well, I wouldn't like that. I just think about that level of liquid right now is very displeasing.
I know. And also there's the weight gain, right? I mean, you're a bit younger, but there's this weird thing that happens to you as you get into your late 50s where you literally live on dust and water and you still get heavier.
Right.
And I don't want to get heavier. I'm super tall, so I'm about 6'1". So it's already putting quite a lot of strain on my joints. I don't need a lot of extra kilos.
Yeah.
But I eat a fraction of what I did as a younger woman. And I love food. So it does seem a little unfair.
Totally.
That we are to be deprived of, wine and food and all these simple pleasures of life.
Yes.
But it just is the way.
Right. So I'll get into the questions that I have. My first question that I have been asking everybody is, what was your relationship with your body been like in your life, and what journey has that been on? And I particularly think that from baby size to 6'1" is quite interesting along the way too. So what would you say your answer to that is?
Well, I hated as a kid being so tall. I was super tall. I must have stopped growing at sort of 12 or 13 when puberty hit.
Oh, my word.
I grew so fast that I couldn't even stand up for a long time in school assembly. I'd just faint. All my energy went into growing. And I was incredibly self-conscious about it. But then when I stopped growing, I started comfort eating. I can't really remember why. So I'd say through my teens, 20s and 30s, I just had a terrible relationship with my body and food. I always wanted to be thinner. I mean, it was the supermodel era, right? And we looked at those women and we knew intellectually that they were uber beings and probably airbrushed, but we still felt a bit dimply of thigh and, blubbery of belly. And so I was always either starving myself or eating too much. I don't know, something happened to me in my 40s. Maybe I just realized that my body was never going to be perfect because now age was happening to it too. And suddenly I just learned how to just eat a normal amount. And so I'm really wary of anything to do with being on a diet because I think it might flip that switch again and I might go back to, eating 25 cakes or only an apple.
Feast or famine, literally, right?
And also, I spent so much time thinking about it. I was constantly feeling guilty about what I'd eaten, or thinking, if I'm standing on the scales and thinking, oh no, look, I've put on 2 kilos. It just used up so much of my brain power. I could have run a small nation with brain power that I was focusing on it. And it is such a relief to not have to spend that much time.
Yeah. And I can relate to that. I've talked about this quite a bit because I'm epileptic and I started taking pills when I was 16 and they made me hungry, but I didn't know that's what made me hungry. So I was on Jenny Craig feeling so horrible that I just couldn't. I was spin classes and it just wouldn't budge. And I just got but then I just, similar sort of thing, and my husband definitely helped, but I changed medication and lost a bit of weight. So then became, not a sylph, but a lot sort of happier in myself. And so that's why I get a bit terrified of putting on weight, because it's been such a journey to get to this point. And things like I don't know if this might end up being, estrogen related potentially, but I've had these sort of weird chest pains, but they sort of move all over. But I got an ECG and I do have vaguely high cholesterol. It's like about sort of 5.6, 5.7. So it's not outrageous. But the nurse said to me, maybe you could try and lose some weight. And this was last year. And I just went, well, do you know what? I've dieted like a motherfucker and it doesn't make any. And she was a little, because I'm quite sweary, but she just looked a bit taken aback. And it was like the mere hint of somebody trying to tell me to diet. Yeah. And that's because it was so, and I had managed to flick it out that just, I just got a bit emotional and just went, no. Basically.
Same. I mean, my doctor said the same because my BMI is just to the point where I'm officially overweight. And she said, you could lose some weight. And I was like, or I could just try and stay healthy and,
Yeah.
And
at one point my BMI said I was obese. And I was just like, to hear that word obese.
Really triggering, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, even overweight is triggering. Whereas I'm like, well, I definitely would like not to get any heavier. But I don't want to get back into that mental headspace again because it was just terrible.
Yeah, totally. Well, congratulations. Well done to you. And then did menopause come along and change your feelings about your body again?
Has menopause changed my feelings about my body? I think now, because sort of in my 50s. I spent a lot of time in my 30s and 40s riding horses and falling off them.
Wow.
And so I've stuffed my joints a bit and I've got quite a lot of pain from that. So now the way I feel about my body is on the days when it works well and the pain's not bad and I can do things, I really like my body, but I'm frustrated with it when it's refusing to, play the game or keeping me awake at night by being sore.
Yeah.
I think I care much less.
Oh, there's a dog.
That's my dog. That's Lucy. I care much less about the sort of aesthetics of it. I mean, I still want to look nice. I don't want to look like a, sort of scary sea monster. But, but I just look at my thighs and think they are the thighs that I have been carrying around with me for the past 30 years, and that's what they're always going to be like. So.
It's hard, isn't it? Because it's our corporal being is the thing that transports us. It's the things that's supported our career. It's made us who we are. But then you can have such loathing for it, but you need to try and let that go. But then it can feel like it's betraying you as well.
And the things that happen to you in menopause, like I guess because your skin starts to lose collagen, my arms were always quite good and skinny, but now they've got this kind of pleated thing happening to them. And so when I put a short sleeve top on and I see the scrunch, I just can't bear it. And I mean, I'm not saying women shouldn't show the scrunch off. Hats off to you if you're not worried about it. But I just don't like it. So all of a sudden I'm changing my wardrobe. I'm buying clothes with longer sleeves and that are baggier. It's really hard to do that without those clothes also just being really frumpy and boring.
And hot.
Yeah. And so I kind of have been going through this process of slowly getting rid of things that I don't feel good in. But it's quite hard. And every now and then, you'll have a little bag to take to the op shop. And every now and then I'll snatch something back out of the departure lounge and restore it to my wardrobe.
To never be worn.
Don't wear it. So that's the way my body's changing visually. I suppose that does bother me a bit. I just don't want to see the crinkly arms in a photograph of me or...
Yeah.
And it's the skin. It's not that they've changed shape particularly. It's just this kind of, like I read in bed at night a lot and I've got quite a bright light, because I can't see very well anymore. And sometimes I'm holding my book up and I look at that inner arm area in the bright light and go, oh.
I know. And this is a relatively new thing for me, that crepey sort of, and it's confronting.
It has to be a really good book to distract your attention from that.
Like I was reading your book in bed, so there you go. Look at that. Now, and I have to ask this question. You might not want to know about it because I finished your book and then I've just started another book by another Nicky about menopause. And so it must be frustrating that two of these books have come out in the same month in New Zealand about menopause.
Yeah, I felt a bit daunted knowing we were both working on it at the same time on the same topic because she's a really great journalist, so I knew she'd do a well-researched book. But I also knew our voices would be very different because we're quite different people. And I feel like there's space for two books.
Yeah, and it's like I was looking at Mighty Ape just before when I was Googling your name, and it came up saying, would you like to buy these two together? And I thought, well, hurrah. Double the information.
A couple of people I know have read them both and sort of said, we obviously cover a lot of the same grounds in terms of HRT and those things the sort of pillars that you've got to have in there, but that they are very different books otherwise. So,
Well, then hooray. And, and it's amazing. I've said this quite a few times too in this podcast. I started this podcast on International Menopause Day, so the 18th of October, which I didn't even know was a thing. And if you could measure the amount of articles between there and now, I would say it's like exponential growth compared to what it was in the 100 years beforehand. So, and you're part of that, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, and there's some great things that I found. There's an email called Hot Flash Ink that is done by an American woman, and she just looks at everything that's really been around that week on menopause. So just from maybe a movie with a menopausal character to the latest science about something. And I'm still reading that avidly because there's all of a sudden so much more progress in this area. And for a long time, I read a book about the history of the menopause. Oh, you just were better off if you couldn't afford medicine at that point.
Yeah, leeches, sulfuric acid.
Leeches to your vagina.
Yeah.
Or ice, because they thought women's bodies were too hot and it was this kind of heat. And they thought that the menstrual blood had got stuck up there so the leeches would draw it out.
Wow. They just thought it was stuck up there.
Yeah. if you were a poor person and you couldn't afford a doctor, you were at a strong advantage because doctors were doing terrible things to you.
Right. Okay. And it was funny. I just watched a television show on TVNZ On Demand called Rules of the Game, which was a bit shit, I have to say. And it had one woman who was diagnosed with menopausal, and it was like, and in fact, she was like a manifestation, I think, of what people have always felt like, that she was being told she was an old wizened crone, whereas actually, and she was in her, I would say, early 40s, that character. So it would be a bit early, but I was like, and that's the bullshit that's been perpetuated for so long that we actually have to change.
And I think that's why women haven't wanted to be upfront about being menopausal, because it's sort of saying, it's like wearing a t-shirt that says, I am old. And no one wants to be old because you're seen as irrelevant. So I have a big rant about this in the book because I just feel like we need to move on from that, actually, and stop. Ageism seems like the last bastion of allowed prejudice to me. And it's really destructive. And I really want less of this tension between the generations because, that's not very useful either. So I think we need to kind of heal all of that. And you need to not feel that you're old and irrelevant. Lots of women I talked to who had quite corporate jobs, they were terrified of it.
Terrified.
Because all of a sudden they somehow would lose currency.
Yeah.
And when I think back to when I worked in magazines, which were mostly female environments, we always knew when someone's pregnant or even if they were trying for a baby, but we never knew when someone was menopausal. The older women just didn't talk about it at all.
I know, it's fascinating to me.
I was in my 30s. It just never occurred to me that it was a thing.
Me too. So now, did you know anything about menopause, when you were younger?
I guess I'd read about it and I knew it was going to happen to me at some point, but I've imagined it was in the dim and distant future and I wouldn't have to think about it. And then the only thing I really knew was you got hot.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of older relatives, you'd be out with them and they go, they get a bit sweaty. So that was the only thing I really understood. There are so many more symptoms that women have. For instance, at one point, just handfuls of my hair, I've got a lot of hair.
You do?
Handfuls of it fell out. Like it just was thinning and that was bad news for the vacuum cleaner, which was having to suck it all up.
My husband is the one who does the vacuuming, and every time he goes, look at this, and it's just round, and he's found red hair in a very intimate place on his body before, which I hadn't been near.
And I also had this thing where I just feel really itchy. My whole body would just get really, really super itchy.
Right.
And I just think, what's going on with me? But it's a really common perimenopause symptom.
And you didn't put it together?
No, I just had no idea. And the thing that I think probably the first time I realized what was happening was I was just in such a rage. Everybody was driving me completely insane. I just couldn't believe how annoying they were. And my dentist told me I was grinding my teeth down into stumps. And I was like, he said, you've got to stop clenching your jaw. And I was like, well, if everyone would stop being so annoying, I could stop clenching my jaw.
Stop victim blaming. You're victim blaming.
He told me that my jaw, the shape of my jaw was changing because I was overworking the muscles. So I was like, oh, this is really great. People are being annoying and it's making me ugly. My teeth are going to fall out. And then one day, I think I was out for a walk and I thought, why is everyone just so deeply annoying now? And then I thought, I appear to be the common denominator here.
It's very self-aware. Well done.
Maybe this is me. Maybe this is like a menopausal thing. And it's my estrogen and my, spiking up and down. Because I'd also started having migraines, which is kind of caused by your estrogen. Your estrogen kind of roller coasters a bit and your progesterone goes into a more steady decline. And that can cause all sorts of symptoms. So, then I finally worked out the problem lay entirely with me, which was helpful, but didn't really present me with any solutions because I decided I didn't want to take hormone therapy for a list of reasons. So I just had to try to be nicer. And honestly, that wasn't I just had to stop myself. The worst thing I ever did was a man accused me of queue jumping in an upmarket Auckland grocery store.
Farrow Fresh.
Farrow Fresh.
Yeah.
And the tills were a bit confusing there. So I just hadn't realised the queue had been waiting for that till. So I just kind of looked at him and went, oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead. And he went, I think you're rude and so does everybody else. And I was just like, I'll show you rude.
What did you say?
I loomed over him. I don't know what I said, but I think I might have called him an angry little man. But I was the angry one. And then after I'd, given him the full benefit of my opinion of what happened, I kind of went, whew, that wasn't normal. And the woman behind the till went, are you all right? And I went, I think so.
And did he just like back off or?
Everybody just stared at me in horror. And then I did have another moment in the same grocery store where everybody in COVID, the beginning of COVID, and people were disobeying the queue system. And I just couldn't bear it. So in the end, I was like a little sheepdog. I was going, you there, you move there, you there. And this woman said to me, well, I'm now behind where I was before. I said, well, at least you will not get the virus. And then I thought, this is just the menopause turning me into my mother, because that's exactly the kind of thing she'd have done. We formed the queue at Farrow Fresh. I probably am going to get banned.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Farrow Fresh is the common denominator. It's because you went, how much for some butter?
What? How much? Well, okay, have all my money.
So did your mother talk to you about her menopause?
She said, oh, I don't really remember it.
That's so common, isn't it? That blew my mind.
Yeah. And I said, well, I remember you being quite grumpy. And she said, was I? Oh, well, I had a lot on my plate, So, yeah. And she didn't remember having, because they say it's going to be like your mother's experience.
Yeah.
So I think talking to her would be useful. But I don't know. My mother, once I was writing a novel and I wanted to base it on something my mother had done. And I said, would you just write down all your memories of that time for me? And she gave me like a single sheet of paper. So I think she's an unreliable narrator.
That's right. So you were like, oh, no, I have to actually write stuff.
Yeah, now I've got to make it up.
Right. Okay. Yeah, my mother had a hysterectomy when she was 40 and she's still having hot flashes and she's 75.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's terrifying.
I am still having them a little bit, but I'm not getting the crazy heart palpitation thing I was getting, and they're not as bad as they were. And sometimes it is actually hot. That's the other thing.
Yes, that's what I'm finding. I'm like, when you're at this age, it's like a horror film and you're like, is that it? Oh, is it? It's like the strings are ratcheting up and something's about to, but you're not quite sure. Is it just hot? Or is it? Especially right now, it's so hot in Auckland. Well, it's cooled down now.
But my first one, it was also summer, and I was at this kind of event, and I was talking to Linda Hallinan, the gardening writer, and I said to her, oh, it's just unbearably hot in here. I'm stifled. I may have to leave. And she said, Nicky, it's not hot.
Wow.
I was like, oh, do you think? And she said, yes, I do.
I know. I did a wedding but it was in a conservatory. And then I just had this, and it was so hot, but I was wearing synthetic fabrics in the conservatory. I think that's what it was. But this other woman came up to me, the mother of the bride, and went, oh, but you're menopausal. I was like, I genuinely don't think so. But yes, who knows? So you had some sort of, would you say they were debilitating symptoms?
The heart thing was freaky. The palpitations were really freaky. And I think I got anxious about it, which made them worse. So I actually almost passed out a couple of times, which is what sent me to the doctor. And I wore one of those Holter monitors things. Actually, and so I just wanted to go immediately to a cardiologist. So I booked the first one I could find. And he was about 9,000 years old. And I said to him, I'm thinking this might be a menopause symptom. And he went, what? And I said, well, have you had other middle-aged women with the same complaint? And he went, no.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's so annoying.
I know. I would advise going to a slightly more onto it person, if anybody, because I think it probably is a good idea to get checked out if weird things are happening to your heart.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So it's why I got an ECG. I had to run on a treadmill without a bra on, which was like, what the fuck? So I said there was some tremors in Waitakere Hospital around that time because I got some really big knockers. And they had to put a compression bandage on me to hold them in. Well, they said no one else has ever said what before. So I was the first. Yeah. I was like, these are double G cups. And then I was running I just got to the running phase, and they said, "Do you want to? Are you too tired?" I'm like, "I'm not tired, but do you have enough data to form a conclusion?" She said, "Yes," and then I said, "Well, I will stop then." And then they said, "Oh, 10 minutes." Was like, "No, I could have run for longer, but I didn't want to be swinging around and hitting my face with my memory glass."
It's not good for those babies to have that kind of stuff happen to them.
Exactly. But it was good to, that's the first thing, because my dad's had stents. So that's the thing, you have to rule out, because there's this, particularly for me, because I've been doing this podcast, now I'm like, is that menopause? Is that menopause? But you really have to rule other things out as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it was a good thing to do. And almost knowing, my doctor I went back to my GP and she said, well, I think we both know that this is a hot flush thing. So I'm going to give you some beta blockers and you can take them if you're worried. And if it's just because it felt kind of horrible. But then the minute I knew it wasn't anything serious, it seemed to not be as bad. I think my anxiety about it exacerbated it. So,
which makes sense.
I think that is the other thing, that every symptom passes, really. I mean, apart from your mum, some women do still keep having hot flushes, but the itchiness stopped, the migraines stopped. I'm a much nicer person now than I was during the winters. I don't feel as weepy for no reason. So it is a real transition. And when you're in the middle of a horrible set of symptoms, you can start to feel like it's awful and there's nothing that can be done. But I think that was the other real learning from the book, that even if you don't want to take hormone therapy, there's a whole bunch of other things. And the problem with natural therapies is often there's no evidence for them because it can be expensive, but often there's no evidence for them because there's no pharmaceutical company is going to bother doing the research. And the only other way medical research happens is if the government funds it or a philanthropist funds it. So, black cohosh was something millions of women, not millions, lots of women said to me worked really well for them. But there's not a great deal of research for it. And I think if you can afford something and it's not got bad side effects and you feel it helps you, then you should take it. And some of them aren't expensive. Magnesium's not expensive. Melatonin to help with sleep shouldn't be expensive, because insomnia probably was the thing that most affected me. And it was the year before last, so 2 years. I literally had a period where I would get up at 4 a.m. and just write a novel.
I mean, at least you were productive.
At least I was productive, but I just felt like sleep was so far from being a possibility.
Do you mind saying what your reasons were for not trying HRT, to maybe try and stop that? Or
there is a lot of cancer in my mother's family.
There we go.
And a little bit of breast, but enough for me to slightly feel, and they always seem to get it at the age I am now, the women.
Right.
So that was a factor. Also, I feel like I'm through the worst of it now. And my doctor gave me some melatonin, which is ridiculously expensive. It's not funded, and you have to get it on prescription. I think you can buy 3 months of it online if you get permission from somebody. But lots of women are just getting it online, and they shouldn't be doing that. It's a prescription medication in New Zealand, and it's expensive and unfunded. But that definitely helps. So I think they should just fund that and make our access to it easier, because it's a very natural hormone. There's not really any dangers attached to it.
And that was funded in Australia, isn't it?
I think so. I think it's funded in most places. In America, you can just buy it online. In the UK, you can. Loads of women told me that worked. So I think I sort of found other things that helped. But I was actually talking to someone the other day who's on HRT, and she looked fantastic, and she was 80.
Like Peter says she's going to take it forever. So Peter Matthias. So,
and this woman was still working part-time in her chosen, reasonably demanding profession. And she said, I believe that the HRT is why I'm still able to operate in this way at my age.
So is that giving you pause?
Because of course, I don't really care about living forever, but I would like to be healthy for as long as I do live, and purposeful, and and
it's all that stuff about warding off arthritis and cardiovascular disease and dementia. Like, there's a lot of support for that.
Osteoporosis, there's quite a lot of evidence for it, for osteoporosis. So but I need to make my mind up, because you need to do it within 10 years of your period. There seems to be quite a lot of evidence that if you've been without the hormones for a long time, it does more harm than good to, reintroduce them. So it's kind of almost 2 years since my last period. I need to make my mind up if I'm going to do it. And my GP is definitely not very keen on the idea. A lot of GPs train during the period where HRT was absolutely a no-no because of the Women's Health Initiative study. And even though that data has been drilled down in and they've seen that a lot of the women were older and it obviously wasn't such a great idea at their age, and for younger women there were actually a lot of benefits, a lot of GPs are really nervous. And I kind of get it. Doctors, particularly GPs, have so much responsibility and so many things they have to have a handle on, and they're not probably reading the International Menopause Society's latest directives, before they go to bed at night.
Though I feel like when it's 50% of the population, it just blows my mind. I doubt there were very many ailments that men were suffering where they contemplated chopping their dicks off, when we had clitorectomies and stuff. And it just feels like women's health, and you talk about this in the book, has been so sidelined for so long. And it just galls me that people aren't focusing on learning as much as they can about something that happens to 50% of the population.
Yeah, and there was a call a couple of years back for us to have a women's health strategy because there's all sorts of areas where it's falling down. Contraception, it's kind of tricky.
ACC.
Yeah, I mean, I had a cervical smear the other week and that was $45, which was fine. I can afford that. But I thought there must be a lot of women out there. Maybe they can get a free one at family planning, but it just all seems very fragmented and tricky. And I don't feel like anybody should have to pay for a cervical smear. It's such and in fact, we shouldn't even be having smears. We should be having HPV tests, and they're coming in eventually. But that has been incredibly slow. That was meant to be introduced, I think, 2 years ago, and it's just kept being pushed back.
Oh, yes. I think COVID had something to do with that too, hasn't it? Yeah.
But it's always COVID, isn't it?
Yeah. With this heart, well, I don't think it's heart. It's like chest pain. And so, as I said, it's moved around. I've had mammograms, I've had a chest x-ray and an ECG. And I've been referred to general medicine, which is about 4 months. And then I had one time when it was quite painful. So my doctor said, because I don't have insurance, but often I'll pay for the first visit and then you can get into the system from there. That's how it works in New Zealand for people listening overseas. So I was like, oh, okay. And when I've done this before, it's been $350, $400. So she referred me to this place in Ponsonby and I rang up and it was going to be $800 for a consult. And it was all I could do from going, that's fucking irresponsible, and hanging up, but I just cancelled. I was like, well, I'll just wait. Yeah. Because I've had ruled out things that seem more serious, I was like, well, I can wait and put up with this, particularly because I'm not on stage anytime soon. But I was just horrified by that.
Is it anxiety?
No,
you don't think it's anxiety?
No, I don't think so. No, it's just a pain that happens, and like, so I do have diverticulosis, and I've read that it could be deferred pain from that. So maybe it's that. I don't know, but that's why I was going to go and try and find out. No, I'm really not because I'm epileptic, I take epilepsy pills that are also mood stabilizers. So I don't even know if I'm usually this chill, but I am quite chill. I am very, very stable when it comes down to it. So I don't know, but I'm just trying to figure it out. But not for $800, I'm not.
No, because that was one of the other things with the women I was talking to. There was a real spike in anxiety and
that's big.
Women who I've known for years and considered slightly overconfident had lost their confidence.
Yeah, wow. Anyway. I remember reading, because Marion Keyes wrote a novel about how she suddenly got depression in her 40s. And at the time I was like, that's interesting. And then I thought about it recently and went, oh my God, that was, and I think she has said that it was menopause now. But at the time she had no idea. And so there you go.
Because you've got estrogen receptors in your brain, like anywhere else. And when it disappears, they reckon your brain sort of has to recalibrate. So it goes through this period of adjustment. And that's when the brain fogs come, and they're not being able to remember the word or what you did with something. And lots of women said to me that they thought they had early onset dementia and really freaked out.
Yep.
A couple of women I spoke to had left jobs because they just felt like they couldn't do the job anymore. They could do the job, but they just lost their confidence because of this weird brain fart thing.
And it is really interesting that, like, I was talking to people in the corporate world as well, and that like almost didn't want me to be spreading the word around because it gave employers an excuse not to employ older women.
Yeah, but we got over that with women of childbearing age, didn't we?
Yeah,
So
it's so
people,
true. We've
I
done
think,
period poverty, we've done, parental leave. So now we just have to get this. And I think, and you're definitely playing into that a lot. So did you find that it affected your working life when you were going through issues?
I guess because I am freelance, so I don't have to be in an office at any time, and I can get up at 4 in the morning and do some work and then perhaps have a little nap later on.
Yeah.
It was easier for me. It's much harder for women in more structured jobs. Also, I don't have kids.
Mm.
If you've got children, and a lot of women have their children later these days, so potentially you might be perimenopausal with quite a young family and a demanding job. I think that would be really tough.
I know. I
find it a lot
agree.
easier than that.
Yeah. It's because I'm exactly the same. And I just think about that. Because I've done up our house. We were very lucky to be able to buy a house in Auckland through family help. I'm not going to say any golden to try and help you buy a house. And I've done up quite a lot. And my friend was like, "Oh, it looks so good. I haven't done anything." I'm like, "Oh my God, you have 2 children and a full-time job." Of course. So it is much, much easier to be able to set your own. I mean, it means that I'm perilously unemployed right now with COVID, but I do enjoy the self-employed lifestyle. I mean, I've never had a job. I've never had a salary in my life.
In your whole life.
In my
Wow.
whole life. Yeah. Don't know. I'm not very good at being told what to do. You can just ask my parents, that's for sure.
I think lots of workplaces are beginning to see that they need some sort of policy around it and that things are changing. So it will just be a bit of a gradual process like it is with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Before we get to my out of the box section, was there anything else you thought you might want to talk to about, or any insights? Or
I guess the main thing is that I worry about women getting so ground down in this period of their lives, and there are things you can do. And I have heard from a couple of women who read my book and emailed me and said, "Thank you. I went to the doctor. I've just been feeling so terrible. I told her how I felt, and I'm on HRT now. And, I just wouldn't have done it if I hadn't read the book." And I feel like there's probably quite a lot of women out there soldiering on because that's what we do.
mm-hmm.
And we've had period pains and we've given birth and done all these things. So they're just soldiering on through this. And it's not necessary that there's this wide range of things you can do. Doesn't necessarily have to be hormones. Because why be miserable and in a rage and uncomfortable if you don't have to be?
Absolutely. Yeah, some people have contacted me after listening to this and have decided and gone to their doctors, and it's incredibly gratifying. So is there any top 5 tips you could give, or is that just read, don't sweat it? Just go and read your book.
Just read the book. Top 5 tips. I don't know if I can be quite that internet friendly.
Yeah, right.
It's complicated, I mean, even that when you're looking at the discussion around HRT, it's complex. And in fact, a friend rang me and said, "I've read your book, I'm going to go and get HRT." And I said, but you've had breast cancer. I don't think it's a good idea. And she went, "Okay, I'll talk to my oncologist." And she did, and the oncologist said, "No, it's not a good idea."
Yeah.
So I was a bit horrified that she had interpreted my book as everybody should have it, don't worry, because I'm really not saying that at all.
No, and I didn't get that.
Considered.
Yeah. No, I totally didn't take that from the book. So yeah, I think that you covered quite the wide range, and you also made it personal about yourself. So to me, it's sort of like a mix of menopause handbook and also a little, not memoir per se, but about what your manifesto. There we go. It's a manifesto.
I talk about my own vagina a lot.
Yes.
And in fact, I talk about myself a lot as well as interviewing other people. And the other day I was out walking my dog on the beach, and this woman I don't really know, I just see her occasionally, came up to me and started telling me about her HRT. And then she went, "So have you got a womb?" And I just don't know that I want to be the poster child of menopause to this point, that I have to disclose my womb status. I do feel like women really want to talk about it now, that there was maybe a period where they didn't, but now I'm finding women everywhere just want to tell me about it, and hearing from women, and women are Instagramming the book and going, "I'm reading this." So I feel like some of that kind of stigma that very wrongly surrounded it might be falling away. I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think both of your books, the timing of it with the zeitgeist of this revolution and stuff is
Yeah.
exceptionally good, because not only are you getting publicity for your books, but you're getting the benefit of all the other publicity about it as well. And look, you can read this book and learn all about it. So that's great. So do you have, I've got my fun fact out of the box, menopause. Did you have a fun fact about menopause you could share with the room?
A fun fact about menopause. A fun fact about menopause would be that your periods stop and you can wear white trousers again. Or a skirt.
I have never worn white trousers in my life.
Well, I do now just because I can.
Right.
I mean, I still throw my food down them.
So you don't have to throw the nappy sand away just yet.
Menopause hasn't helped that, but just honestly, just never having to think again, oh, but what if my period comes and it's really heavy and I can't do that? That's the fun thing about menopause, I think. And a lot of women, I think, grieve, the end of their fertility. I didn't. I just went out and bought the white pants.
Yeah, I think I'd throw a party for the end of my fertility, because I've never wanted children either. And that's the thing, I almost feel like we should get tested and when we're in our teens about if you've got, you might be infertile, and then you could save yourself a lot of money and stress with contraception.
Contraception, worry if you've missed a period. Yeah, you could.
All of those sorts of things. Anyway, on that note, please go and buy yourself Don't Sweat It by Nicky Pellegrino from Allen and Unwin. Congratulations on your superstardom and mega novelist / writer continuing fame, absolutely. And good luck with everything, and maybe good luck with HRT or not. We'll see how you go.
We'll see, yes.
Right, okay. Well, thanks very much. Goodbye.
Thank you, goodbye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed your International Women's Day bonus episode from the sellout, in the best possible way, author of note, Nicky Pellegrino. Do check out her book, Don't Sweat It, How to Make the Change, a good one from Allen and Unwin. And, well, you had 2 podcasts, but guess what? There's even more coming. What? I know, right? Well, as it's International Women's Day week, I thought, hey, let's rattle some cages and bring in a bewildered man, aka my husband, Matt, who has had an accidental immersing in menopause by living in the same house as me. So I thought, hey, let's see what's rubbed off on him. So that's coming on Friday. Next week, it's David Bowie's China girl, Jiling Qing, also star of one of my favourite 80s telly shows, Gloss. Please do share this podcast as per usual. You could Facebook me, tweet me, twat me. Let's get the word out there, or head to my Patreon if you wanted to help get this podcast made. And special thanks to my existing Patreon superstars who pay for the hosting of this podcast. I see you and I appreciate you. But I'll see you with my husband in tow later this week on Showy Ovaries. I've been New Zealander Penny Ashton. Ciao, Bellas.